We voted. None of us want you at Thanksgiving. It's better for the kids. That's what my daughter wrote in the family group chat while I was standing in my kitchen, elbow deep in sweet potatoes. 45 years I've been making that dish. 45 Thanksgivings. My mother's recipe, passed down to me when I was 24 and didn't know yet how to peel a potato without cutting myself. And there I was, 69 years old, reading those words on a screen no bigger than my palm, and the marshmallows were already starting to melt on the counter because I'd set them out to soften the way Mama always told me to. 3 gray dots appeared. Someone typing. My son, Todd. Sorry, Mom, majority rules. I waited for my youngest, Nina, to say something. Anything. The dots didn't come. She wasn't even going to pretend. I turned off the burner. The sweet potatoes sat there in the pot, half-cooked, the water still simmering around them like it didn't know the world had just shifted on its axis. I looked at my hands. They weren't shaking. That surprised me. They just hung at my sides like they didn't know what to do with themselves anymore. Like they'd spent decades holding things together for other people, and now that there was nothing left to hold, they'd forgotten their purpose entirely. The kitchen clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed. Outside, somebody's dog barked twice and went quiet. All the ordinary sounds of an ordinary afternoon, and me standing there with sweet potato starch drying on my fingers, reading those 12 words over and over, like maybe I'd misunderstood. Like maybe "we voted" meant something else in some language I'd never learned. My name is Beverly. I'm 69 years old, a retired school nurse, a widow for 8 years now. I raised 3 children in this house, Kristen, Todd, and Nina. And I buried my husband in the backyard cemetery of the Baptist church 4 blocks away. This is the kitchen where I taught my kids to crack eggs without getting shell in the bowl, where I packed lunches at 5 in the morning before my shift at the elementary school, where I sat with my husband every Sunday doing the crossword puzzle, together until his hands got too weak to hold the pen. And now, apparently, this is the kitchen where I learned that my children held a vote about me, like I was a zoning issue, like I was an item on an agenda somebody wanted to get through before lunch. Well, that's a fine how do you do.
You know what hurts most? When they don't even ask you first. They just decide, in some group chat you're not even part of, and that's it. You're out. Has that happened to you? Tell me in the comments. Because Beverly's story, Lord, it hit close to home.
I didn't cry that first night. I think I was too confused to cry. I sat at the kitchen table until the light changed from afternoon gold to evening gray to full dark, and I just kept reading those words over and over, trying to find the part I'd misunderstood. We voted. Who votes on their mother? What kind of family sits around a table? Or worse, types on their phones from separate rooms and says, "All in favor of not inviting Mom? Raise your hand." The sweet potatoes went in the garbage around midnight. I couldn't look at them anymore. They sat there in their pot like an accusation, like they knew they'd never get to be what they were meant to be. I tied the trash bag tight and put it out on the curb, even though pickup wasn't until Thursday, because I needed them out of my house. I needed something out. The next morning I called Kristen. She's the oldest, 41 now, the one who organized everything when her father died, the one who always has a clipboard in her head even when her hands are empty. She used to be the sweetest child, always making me cards, always wanting to help in the kitchen, always asking to sleep in my bed during thunderstorms. I don't know when that girl disappeared. I don't know what woman replaced her. She picked up on the 3rd ring, and I could hear the annoyance in her breathing before she even said hello. "Mom, I knew you'd call." "Kristen," I said, and my voice came out calmer than I felt, calmer than I had any right to be. I need you to explain something to me. What do you mean you voted?" She sighed. That sigh. I've heard it 1,000 times. The sigh that means I'm being difficult, that I'm making things complicated, that I'm not understanding something obvious that everyone else already knows. The sigh that makes me feel like I'm back in school, getting an answer wrong in front of the whole class. Mom, don't make this into a big dramatic thing, okay? We talked about it as a family. Me, Todd, Nina, and we decided that this year, Thanksgiving should just be smaller. The kids get overwhelmed when there's too many people. You ask them a lot of questions. You bring food nobody eats. Last year, Cooper said, She stopped. Cooper said what? Another pause. Then quieter, like she was doing me a favor by telling me, He said you smell like old medicine. I sat down. I had to. My legs just decided they weren't going to hold me up anymore. The chair scraped against the floor too loud and I flinched at the sound. Cooper is 12. I changed his diapers. I walked him around the block in his stroller when he had colic, and Nina was too exhausted to get out of bed. I sat with him in the emergency room when he broke his arm, falling off the swing set, and I held his hand while they put the cast on, because Nina was stuck in traffic and couldn't get there in time. I sang him lullabies and read him stories, and taught him how to tie his shoes. And now Cooper thinks I smell like old medicine. Now Cooper's opinion is being used as evidence in some kind of family trial I didn't even know was happening. Mom, you there? I'm here, I said. Look, it's not personal. We're just trying to create a stress-free environment for the holidays. You understand? I didn't understand. I said goodbye and hung up before she could hear my voice crack. For the next few days, I moved through the house like a ghost in my own life. I watered the plants even though some of them didn't need it. I watched television without seeing it. Just stared at the colors moving on the screen like they meant something. I made soup and forgot to eat it. It sat on the stove until it got cold. And then I put it in the refrigerator, and then I threw it out 2 days later, because looking at it made me feel worse. The sweet potato ingredients were still on the counter. The bag of marshmallows, the brown sugar, the cinnamon. I should have put them away, but I couldn't bring myself to touch them. They sat there like a crime scene nobody had cleaned up yet. I kept thinking about last Thanksgiving. I'd driven 40 minutes to Kristen's house with that casserole in the passenger seat, buckled in like a child so it wouldn't spill. I'd gotten up early to make it, even though my arthritis was bad that week, and every potato I peeled felt like a negotiation with my own hands. But I did it. Because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. When I got there, Kristen took one look at the casserole and said, Mom, the kids won't eat that old stuff. She put it on the counter in the corner of the kitchen, behind the crock pot and the stack of paper napkins, where nobody would see it. And nobody did. It sat there all through dinner, all through dessert, all through the part where everyone stood around talking while I helped clean up even though nobody asked me to. At the end of the night, she handed the casserole back to me, completely untouched, wrapped in foil like something to be disposed of quietly. Take this home, she said. No point in it going to waste. I drove home with that casserole in my lap, the ceramic still warm against my legs, and I ate it alone for the next 3 days. It tasted good. It tasted like my mother. And I ate it by myself at my kitchen table, and I didn't tell anyone because who would I tell? Who wanted to hear about an old woman eating sweet potatoes alone? But here's the thing that caught in my throat, like a fishbone. The thing that woke me up at 3 a.m. a week after Thanksgiving and made me reach for my phone in the dark. 2 days after that holiday dinner, I was scrolling through my phone. I don't do it often, My fingers are clumsy on the screen and everything is too small. But sometimes I like to see pictures of the grandchildren. And I saw Kristen's Instagram page. There was a photo from Thanksgiving dinner posted right there for all her friends to see. A big oval dish in the center of the table, golden brown marshmallows puffed up on top, the edges caramelized just right. The caption said, "My famous sweet potato casserole with marshmallows. Family recipe. 847 likes." I stared at that photo for a long time. My eyes aren't great anymore, but I looked at every detail, zooming in until the image got blurry. That was my casserole. The same one she said the kids wouldn't eat. The same one she shoved into the corner and handed back to me like garbage. And there it was, on her Instagram, with her name on it, her hashtags attached, people commenting about how delicious it looked and could she share the recipe. My mother's recipe. My hands peeling those potatoes every year until my fingers ached. 45 years of making that dish for my family, and Kristen was taking credit for it like she'd invented the thing herself. I put the phone down and looked at the ceiling for a while. There's a crack up there that's been spreading for years. A thin, dark line that starts near the window and creeps toward the light fixture. My husband always said he'd fix it. "Next weekend, Bev, I'll get up there and patch it." He never did. Now, it's just part of the house, like everything else that got left behind when people moved on and forgot their promises. Let me tell you about my children. Let me tell you what I gave them, because maybe then you'll understand why those 12 words in a group chat felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. When Kristen was 32, her marriage fell apart. Her husband had been cheating on her with a woman from his office, some young thing in marketing who wore pencil skirts and laughed at his jokes like he was the funniest man alive. When Kristen found out, she called me at 2 in the morning, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. Just sounds. Animal sounds. The kind that come from deep in your body when something breaks that you thought was unbreakable. I drove to her house that night. An hour and a half in the dark, my eyes not as good as they used to be, the headlights of other cars too bright. But I made it. And I stayed with her for 4 months. 4 months of cooking dinner, doing laundry, taking the kids to school and picking them up and helping with homework. 4 months of sitting with her while she cried, listening to her rage, holding her when she couldn't hold herself up. 4 months of sleeping on her guest bed that had a spring that poked my back because I didn't want to complain, because she was going through something terrible and my discomfort didn't matter. I paid for her divorce lawyer too, $12,000. She said she'd pay me back, and I said don't worry about it, and we both knew she never would. I didn't care. That's not why I did it. I did it because she was my daughter and she was in pain and I had the money sitting in savings, and what else was it for? When Todd lost his job 3 years ago, he called me in a panic. He's 44 now, my middle child, the one who was always a little lost even as a boy. Never quite knew what he wanted to be when he grew up. Still doesn't, I think. He had a mortgage on a house bigger than he needed, a car payment on a car fancier than he could afford, 2 kids in activities that cost money he didn't have, the soccer leagues and the art classes and the tutoring, because his wife thought their children should be ahead of other children, as if life were a race someone was keeping score of. I gave him $15,000 from my retirement savings. A loan, he called it. He wrote it down on a piece of paper and everything, the amount and the date and his signature. Like that made it official, like that made it something other than a mother bailing out her son one more time. 3 years later, I haven't seen a dime. I never asked. I figured he'd offer when he could. He never could, or never wanted to. I don't know which anymore, and I've stopped trying to figure it out. When Nina had Cooper, she asked me to come stay with her for a few days to help with the baby. She was 37 and having her first child, and she was terrified in a way that made me ache for her. My youngest. My baby having a baby. Of course I said yes. A few days turned into 6 weeks. 6 weeks of night feedings while Nina slept. Diaper changes while Nina slept. Cooking meals for Nina and her husband while Nina recovered. Though mostly she just slept until noon and watched television while I walked her colicky baby around the block, bouncing him against my shoulder until my arms were sore and my back. Screamed at me. I didn't mind. Not really. That's what mothers do. That's what grandmothers do. We show up. We help. We don't keep score. But I remember one afternoon when Cooper finally fell asleep and I sat down on Nina's couch for just a minute, just to rest my eyes because I'd been up since 4 and I wasn't as young as I used to be. And Nina came down the stairs and looked at me sitting there and said, "Mom, could you not sit there? That's where I like to sit." I got up. Of course I did. I always got up. I always moved. I always made room for everyone else's comfort, even when my own bones were crying out for rest. My husband used to watch me run myself ragged for those kids, even when they were grown and had kids of their own. "Bev," he'd say, shaking his head, watching me pack the car for another trip to help one of them with something, "you give them the shirt off your back and they'll complain it's wrinkled." I didn't listen. I thought that was just how love worked. You give and eventually they appreciate it. Eventually they see you. Eventually they sit down one day and realize how much you've sacrificed, and they say thank you, and maybe they even cry a little, and you hug them, and everything is worth it. I was wrong. They saw me just fine. They saw a service, a convenience. A vending machine of time and money and labor that always had something left to give if they just pushed the right button. The week after Thanksgiving, social media became a minefield I had to tiptoe through. Nina posted photos from the dinner. I found them while I was eating breakfast, my toast getting cold while I scrolled. The whole family around Kristen's big dining table, candles lit, wine glasses catching the light, children's faces smeared with gravy and smiling. The caption said, "Grateful for this crew." I looked at those photos for a long time. There was Aiden, 7 years old, Nina's youngest, holding up a turkey leg bigger than his head, grinning like he'd won a prize. There was Mackenzie, Kristen's daughter, 10 years old now, making a silly face at the camera the way kids do when they think they're being funny. There was Cooper, 12, actually smiling for once instead of staring at his phone like it contained the meaning of life. And there were my 3 children, Kristen, Todd, Nina, looking relaxed, happy, unburdened, looking like people who had made a decision and felt good about it. I wasn't in the photos. Of course I wasn't. I wasn't there. I was 40 minutes away in my kitchen, reading a group chat message and watching marshmallows melt. I zoomed in on their faces, looking for guilt. Some shadow of, "We shouldn't have done this." Some trace of regret. Some sign that they missed me, that the empty chair at the table had made them feel anything at all. But there was nothing, just smiles. Just gratitude for this crew that didn't include me. A few days later, Todd sent a photo to the family group chat. "Look what the kids made." The children's Thanksgiving crafts from school spread out on his kitchen table. Construction paper turkeys with handprints for feathers, little pilgrim hats made from paper cups, the usual stuff that teachers assign when they're trying to fill time before a holiday. And in the corner of the photo, a family tree project that his daughter Mackenzie had done. A big oak tree drawn in marker with branches and leaves and names written on each branch in careful elementary school handwriting. I enlarged the image, squinting at my phone screen. The tree had branches with names on them. Todd and his wife, Kristen and her husband, Nina and her partner. The children's names, each on their own little leaf connected to their parents by carefully drawn lines. My name wasn't there. I kept looking, thinking maybe I'd missed it. Maybe it was on a branch I couldn't see, cut off by the edge of the photo. Maybe it was written too small to read on my tiny phone screen. But no. The tree had grandparents on it. My husband's parents, both of them dead for over 15 years now. Their names were up there on the highest branches. But not me. I was alive, and I wasn't on the tree. Maybe Mackenzie forgot. She's 10. Kids forget things. Kids don't always think about who belongs on a family tree when they're rushing to finish a project before the teacher collects it. Or maybe she didn't forget. Maybe she just drew what she'd been taught to see. Maybe nobody in that family talks about Grandma Beverly anymore. Maybe I'm already disappearing from their lives, fading out like an old photograph left too long in the sun. Kristen posted in the group chat that evening. Dinner was perfect. Best Thanksgiving ever. Nobody responded. The message just sat there with 3 check marks next to it, seen by everyone, acknowledged by no one. And I realized I was probably the only one who read that message and felt anything at all. The only one who looked at those words, Best Thanksgiving ever, and thought about what they really meant. Best because the food was good? Or best because I wasn't there to ruin it with my questions and my old lady smell and my sweet potato casserole that the kids supposedly wouldn't eat? I started cleaning out closets that weekend, not because I wanted to, not because the closets needed cleaning, but because I needed to do something with my hands or I was going to lose my mind. I needed to move boxes and throw things away and make decisions about objects that didn't fight back. I found boxes I hadn't opened in years. Old school papers from when the kids were little. Report cards with teacher comments about how polite they were, how helpful, how they always turned in their homework on time. Photographs in envelopes, the kind we used to get developed at the drugstore before everyone had cameras in their pockets. Tax documents from the 90s, filed carefully by year because my husband was organized that way, and I never had the heart to throw them out. And at the bottom of one box, underneath a broken Christmas ornament and some wrapping paper that had gotten crushed, there was a stack of greeting cards held together with a rubber band so old it snapped when I touched it. The card on top was from Kristen. She'd written it when she was 12 for Mother's Day. The cover had a drawing of flowers she'd made herself. Tulips, I think, or maybe roses, a little lopsided, the colors bleeding outside the lines the way they do when kids press too hard with markers. Inside, in her careful 6th grade handwriting, Mom, you're my best friend. I want to be just like you when I grow up. Love forever and ever, Kristen. I sat on the floor of my closet, surrounded by boxes and dust and the debris of decades, and I held that card for a long time. I touched the paper, traced the letters with my finger, tried to remember the girl who wrote it. Where did she go? When did love forever and ever become we voted? Then I looked at the next card in the stack. Mother's Day from last year. A store-bought card, generic flowers on the front. The kind you grab at the last minute from the display near the checkout line because you forgot until the day before. A printed poem inside about mothers being special, mothers being treasured, mothers being the heart of the family. The kind of poem that sounds nice but means nothing because someone was paid to write it for people who don't want to come up with their own words. At the bottom, in Kristen's adult handwriting, tight and hurried, Happy Mother's Day. K-T-N and kids. No love, no forever. No personal message, no memory shared, No gratitude expressed. Just initials, like signing a business memo, like acknowledging a transaction completed. I spread all the cards out on the floor and looked at them. Decades of cards, arranged in order from oldest to newest. And somewhere between that 12-year-old girl who wanted to be just like me and the 41-year-old woman who voted me out of Thanksgiving, something had changed. A light had gone out. A door had closed. I'd lost my daughter. Or she'd lost me. Or maybe we'd both been losing each other so slowly, year by year, card by card, that neither of us noticed until there was nothing left to hold on to. The first Sunday of December, I went to church. Not because I'm particularly religious. I believe in something. I'm just not sure what to call it or whether it has a name at all. But because it was quiet there, and nobody asked questions, and I could sit in a pew and let my mind go still for an hour without anybody expecting anything from me. The service was fine. The pastor talked about gratitude, which seemed cruel under the circumstances. But I sat there anyway and listened and tried to find some part of it that applied to my situation. Be grateful for the people in your life who love you, he said. I looked around the church at all the families sitting together, the children fidgeting in their Sunday clothes, the couples holding hands, and I felt very alone. After the service, when everyone was filing out and shaking the pastor's hand and saying the polite things people say when they're ready to go home, I stopped by the bulletin board near the entrance. I don't know why. Just killing time, I suppose. Not ready to face my empty house yet. There was a flyer tacked up there among the announcements about prayer groups and fundraisers and the youth ministry ski trip. Volunteers needed. Christmas shelter dinner, December 25th. Help us serve those in need? I stood there looking at it. Christmas was 3 weeks away. My children hadn't mentioned anything about Christmas plans, and I hadn't asked. Part of me was still waiting for an invitation, like a fool, like a woman who hadn't learned yet that waiting gets you nothing but older. Part of me was afraid of what would happen if I waited and the invitation never came. Would I sit in my house alone on Christmas Day, watching television and pretending it was just another day? Would I call them and ask if I could come and listen to the silence on the other end of the line while they figured out how to say no? I took out my phone and typed the number from the flyer into my contacts. Then I walked home in the cold December air, and I called them that afternoon, and I signed up to serve meals on Christmas. Are you sure you don't have family plans? The woman on the phone asked. She sounded surprised. Most people want to be with family on Christmas. I have some free time this year, I said. I'd like to help. She didn't ask more questions. I was grateful for that. That evening, I was cleaning out the kitchen cabinets. More restless energy, more need to move and sort and make decisions. When I found my mother's recipe book tucked behind the slow cooker I never used. It was old, the binding falling apart, the pages stained with decades of cooking, grease spots and watermarks and dried splatters of things I couldn't identify anymore. I'd forgotten I still had it. I thought maybe I'd given it to Kristen years ago, back when I still believed she wanted to learn the family recipes, back when I still thought she cared about that kind of thing. But no, here it was. Mine. I opened it to the page with the sweet potato casserole. My mother's handwriting, faded now but still legible, the ink a little smeared in places where she'd gotten water on the page while she was cooking. She always kept the book right next to the stove, propped open while she worked. The measurements were in her shorthand. Palm of sugar, 2 finger pinches of salt, the kind of instructions that only make sense if you watched her do it 100 times. And at the bottom of the page, in smaller letters squeezed into the margin, a note she'd written. For my Beverly. Make this when you need to feel loved. I closed the book and held it against my chest. My mother had been dead for 23 years, but I could feel her in that moment, standing behind me in the kitchen, her hand on my shoulder, the way it used to be when she was teaching me to cook. I understood something then that I'd never let myself see before. I'd been making that dish all these years, not just because it was tradition, not just because it was good, but because it was my connection to her. Every Thanksgiving, when I peeled those sweet potatoes and arranged those marshmallows just so, I was reaching back through time to the woman who taught me that food was love, that feeding people was how you showed them they mattered, that a kitchen could hold more warmth than any other room in the house. And I'd been giving that love to my children year after year, thinking they understood what it meant. But they didn't. To them, it was just a dish, an inconvenience, something to push into the corner and give back and later claim credit for on Instagram. They took the dish, they ate it, or didn't, and they never once asked where it came from. Never once asked about their grandmother, about the woman who created the recipe, about the hands that first stirred those ingredients together long before any of them were born. "That's a fine how do you do," I said out loud to my empty kitchen, to my mother's ghost, to the book in my hands. But this time, when I said it, something in my chest hardened instead of aching, like a bone setting after a break. Painful, but necessary. Like my body was finally deciding it had been hurt enough, and it was time to heal in a different direction. The first week of December crawled by like it was moving through mud. I called the shelter and confirmed my volunteer shift for Christmas Day. I went to the grocery store and bought only what I needed for myself. One person, no guests to feed. I watched television and read books and took walks around the neighborhood and tried not to look at my phone every 5 minutes. I threw myself into small tasks. Cleaning, organizing, going through old papers like I was preparing for something I couldn't name. I found the receipts from the money I'd given Todd. Bank transfers with dates and amounts and transaction numbers. I found the canceled checks I'd written for Kristen's divorce lawyer, each one endorsed and deposited, each one a piece of my savings gone to save someone who wouldn't save a seat for me at Thanksgiving. I found years of gifts, expenses, loans that were never repaid, favors that were never returned. My entire financial history with my children, laid out in paper trails that proved only one thing. I had given them everything I had, and they had taken it like it was their due. Like I was a bank that never closed, a well that never ran dry, a mother who would always have more to give no matter how much they withdrew. The second week of December, my phone rang. Kristen. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. I don't know why. Maybe I needed those extra seconds to steady myself. Maybe I wanted her to wait for once, the way I'd been waiting for weeks. "Mom, hi." Her voice was bright, cheerful, the voice she uses when she wants something. I know that voice. I've known it since she was a child asking for ice cream before dinner. "How are you?" "I'm fine, Kristen." "Good, good." A pause. "Listen, I was thinking about Christmas. Maybe you could come over early. Help with the cooking?" "The kids really miss your—" She paused, searching for the right word. "Energy." I didn't say anything. Let her fill the silence. She rushed on. "And Todd mentioned— I mean, I don't want to put pressure on you or anything, but he's having a hard month with the car payment and everything, and he was wondering if maybe you could help out a little, just until things settle down?" There it was, the reason for the call. Not to apologize for the voting, not to ask how I was doing after they'd excluded me from Thanksgiving, not to acknowledge that they'd treated me like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved. No. She wanted me to come cook, and she wanted me to give Todd money. "Kristen," I said, "I have a question." "Sure, Mom. What?" "That sweet potato casserole on your Instagram, the one you called your famous family recipe. Where did you get it?" Silence. I could hear her breathing, faster now. "What?" "I don't. That's just. I've been making that forever." "No," I said. "You haven't. I've been making it for 45 years. My mother's recipe. The same one you said the kids wouldn't eat. The same one you put in the corner of your kitchen and handed back to me like garbage." "Mom, that's not." "You stole it, Kristen. You put it on Instagram and pretended it was yours. 847 people liked that photo and commented about how delicious it looked and asked for the recipe. Not one of them knows that the woman who actually made that dish was sitting home alone because her children voted her out of Thanksgiving. I didn't steal anything. It's just a recipe. You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" My voice was calm now, calmer than it had any right to be. Something had settled in me, heavy and still. "You voted me out, Kristen. Your words. You held a vote about whether to include your own mother in a family holiday, and the motion passed. And now, 3 weeks later, you're calling to ask me to come cook for you and give Todd money. You're twisting everything. You always do this. You always play the victim." I let her words hang there between us. Victim? Is that what I was? Is that what she needed me to be, so she could feel better about what she'd done? "Goodbye, Kristen," I said. "Mom, wait." I hung up.
We voted. 3 little words, like she was a problem to solve, not a mother to love. Let me ask you something. If your family voted on you today, would you make the cut?
That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, at that crack my husband never fixed, and ran through every conversation, every interaction, every moment from the past several years, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Was I too clingy? Too needy? Did I really ask too many questions? Did I really smell like old medicine? Cooper's words kept circling in my head like birds that wouldn't land. 12 years old. I'd held him when he was minutes out of his mother's body, this tiny wrinkled thing with his eyes squeezed shut and his fists clenched like he was already ready to fight the world. I'd walked floors with him at 3 in the morning. I'd sung him, "You Are My Sunshine," until my voice gave out. And now he thought I smelled bad. Now his opinion was evidence in the case against me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was difficult in ways I couldn't see because I was too close to myself. Maybe I should call Kristen back, apologize for getting upset, offer to come to Christmas after all, pretend none of this had ever happened. That's what a good mother would do, right? Keep the peace. Smooth things over, make herself small enough to fit into whatever space they left for her. That's what I would have done before. That's what I'd always done. Every time there was tension, every time there was conflict, I was the one who called back and apologized even when I hadn't done anything wrong. I was the one who showed up anyway, swallowed my pride, made excuses for their behavior. Because that's what mothers do, right? We absorb. We forgive. We keep coming back no matter how many times we get pushed away. But sometime around 3 in the morning, when the house was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat, I got out of bed. I walked to the bathroom. I turned on the light and looked at myself in the mirror. An old woman with gray hair and tired eyes, lines around her mouth from years of smiling when she didn't feel like it, hands that ached from arthritis, from peeling potatoes, from carrying grandchildren who'd grown too big to carry. A woman who'd spent her whole life giving and was finally starting to see what she'd gotten in return. They threw me under the bus, I said to my reflection, watching my mouth form the words, and asked why I was lying in the road. And right there, in my bathroom at 3 a.m, standing on the cold tile in my nightgown, I made a decision. I was done lying in the road, done being the one who always apologized, done being the vending machine of love and money and labor that never ran out. They wanted to vote? Fine. I could vote too, and my vote was for myself. December 20th. 5 days until Christmas. The family group chat had been quiet for over a week. No photos, no updates, no casual conversation. The silence felt heavy, like a held breath, like everyone was waiting for someone else to speak first. Then Todd's message appeared. "Mom, what time are you coming on the 25th? Kids want to know." I read it twice, 3 times. Not an invitation, not a question about whether I wanted to come, just an assumption. What time are you coming? Like I was the caterer, expected to show up on schedule with serving dishes and a smile. I didn't respond. 2 days later, December 22nd, Nina sent a message. "Mom, you there?" My youngest daughter, the one I'd lived with for 6 weeks after she gave birth, the one who told me not to sit in her spot on the couch. She hadn't spoken to me directly since the Thanksgiving text, hadn't called, hadn't apologized, hadn't asked if I was okay. And now, with Christmas 3 days away, she was checking to see if I was still functional, still available, still willing to show up and play my part in their holiday. I didn't respond. December 23rd. Kristen. "Mom, we'd love to have you. Kids are asking." We'd love to have you. Such a warm phrase, such a pretty little lie. They didn't love to have me. They'd voted specifically not to have me just 4 weeks ago. But now Christmas was coming, and someone had to make the stuffing, and the kids were asking. Which probably meant the kids didn't care either way, but it sounded better than, "We realized we need you to bring dessert." I picked up my phone. My fingers moved slowly. The arthritis made typing harder these days, made everything harder. But my mind was crystal clear, clearer than it had been in years, maybe ever. "No, thank you. I have plans." 4 words. I read them over twice before I hit send. They looked so small on the screen, so simple, but they felt like the biggest thing I'd ever said, the most honest thing, the first real boundary I'd drawn with my children since they were teenagers breaking curfew. The response was immediate. My phone started buzzing with notifications like a hornet I'd accidentally disturbed. Calls, messages, all 3 of them suddenly very interested in talking to their mother. "Kristen, what plans? You never have plans on Christmas." Todd, "Mom, seriously? Don't be like this." Nina, "This is so childish. What are we supposed to tell the kids?" Kristen again, "You can't just abandon your family on Christmas because you're upset about Thanksgiving. That was weeks ago. Get over it." Todd, "Mom, pick up the phone. We need to talk about this." Nina, "This is manipulative. You're punishing us." Kristen, "I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've done for you." I read every message. I read them slowly, carefully, letting each word sink in. Manipulative. Childish. Get over it. After everything we've done for you. After everything they've done for me. What had they done for me? I tried to think of the last time one of them had helped me without being asked. The last time they'd called just to talk, not to ask for something. The last time they'd said thank you and meant it. I couldn't remember. I turned off my phone, set it in the drawer of my nightstand where I couldn't see the screen lighting up with their anger, and went to bed. Christmas morning, I woke up early. The house was quiet, the way it always is now, but today the quiet felt different. Not lonely, not sad, just mine. My quiet. My house. My day. I put on comfortable clothes. Nothing fancy, just a warm sweater and pants I could move in, and made myself a cup of tea. Through the kitchen window, I could see the sun coming up, pale and cold, painting the frost on the grass in shades of pink and gold. A beautiful morning. A Christmas morning I was going to spend exactly the way I wanted to. I drove to the shelter. It was in the basement of a community center downtown, a building I'd passed 100 times without really seeing it. When I walked in, the smell hit me first. Cooking food, industrial cleaner, coffee brewing somewhere. Too many people in too small a space. Folding tables lined the room, covered with plastic tablecloths in red and green. Volunteers were already setting up chairs, carrying trays, shouting to each other over the noise of preparation. A woman with a clipboard spotted me looking lost. "You must be Beverly. I'm Sandra. Thanks so much for coming." She put me to work immediately, which was exactly what I needed. Setting up chairs, folding napkins, red on one side of the room, green on the other, alternating because someone had decided that would look festive. Carrying boxes of donated food from the storage room to the kitchen, cans of green beans and cranberry sauce and stuffing mix. My back ached and my hands protested every box I lifted, but the work felt good, purposeful. I wasn't sitting at home staring at my phone. I wasn't waiting for someone to want me. I was useful. Around noon, the doors opened and people started coming in. Homeless people in layers of coats, their belongings in shopping carts parked outside. Elderly folks from the nursing home down the street, wheeled in by aides in scrubs. Single parents with children clinging to their legs, looking around the room with big eyes. Teenagers in clothes too thin for the weather, trying to look like they didn't care about being here. All of them, every single one, here because they had nowhere else to go. I stood behind the serving table, scooping mashed potatoes onto plates, saying, "Merry Christmas," to every person who came through the line. Some of them smiled back and said it too. Some of them didn't meet my eyes, just held out their plates and nodded. One elderly man, older than me, with a white beard and watery blue eyes, held my hand for a moment across the serving table. "God bless you, ma'am," he said. "Merry Christmas," I said, and I had to blink hard to keep from crying. Halfway through the lunch shift, a woman took up the position next to me. She was about my age, maybe a little older, 72 I'd later learn, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her hands were spotted with age like mine, but they were steady as she picked up the serving spoon. "Gravy," she said, introducing her station. "I'm on gravy duty." "Ruth?" "Beverly," I said. Mashed potatoes. We worked side by side for a while, in companionable silence, the rhythm of the line carrying us along. Scoop, serve, Merry Christmas, repeat. Scoop, serve, Merry Christmas, repeat. There's something meditative about serving food to people, something that gets you out of your own head. During a lull between waves of people, Ruth leaned over. "First time volunteering here?" "Yes." "Is it that obvious?" She smiled. "You look like I did 2 years ago. Like you're not sure how you ended up here. Like you keep expecting someone to tell you there's been a mistake and you should really be somewhere else." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Family stuff? She asked. Not prying, not pushing, just knowing. The way women our age know things about other women our age. My kids voted me out of Thanksgiving, I heard myself say. Literally, voted. Group text and everything. Ruth nodded slowly, like this wasn't the most shocking thing she'd ever heard. Like she'd heard versions of this story before. Different names and different details, but the same sad shape. Mine stopped inviting me 3 years ago, she said. Didn't even vote. Just stopped calling. I spent 2 Christmases alone before I found this place. How did you? I didn't know how to finish the question. How did you survive? How did you stop caring? How did you keep getting out of bed in the morning when your own children didn't want you? How did I get through it? She shrugged, her eyes on the empty doorway, where the next wave of hungry people would soon appear. I realized something. Alone and lonely are 2 different zip codes. You can be surrounded by family at a holiday table and feel completely invisible. You can be by yourself in an empty house and feel perfectly whole. Took me a while to figure out which was which. I thought about that. Surrounded by family and feeling invisible, that was me at Kristen's house every holiday for the past 5 years, sitting in the corner while everyone talked over me, watching my contributions get pushed aside, feeling like a ghost who hadn't realized yet that she was dead. I'm 72, Ruth continued. Got maybe 10, 15 good years left if I'm lucky, the way my knees are going. I decided I wasn't going to spend them waiting by the phone for people who don't want to call. That sounds, I searched for the word, brave. Nah. She waved her serving spoon dismissively, splattering a bit of gravy on the tablecloth. Brave is the first year. That's when you're still fighting it, still hoping things will change, still crying yourself to sleep. After that, it's not brave. It's just life. You adjust. Humans do that. We adjust to anything eventually. After the lunch shift ended, Ruth and I helped clean up. We wiped down tables with wet rags, stacked chairs against the walls, packed away leftover food into containers for people to take home. The room slowly emptied until it was just a handful of volunteers and the hum of the industrial dishwasher running in the kitchen. Sandra found us as we were putting on our coats. You 2 were fantastic today, she said. Same time next year? We always need good people. I'll be here, Ruth said. She looked at me. What about you, Beverly? Think you'll come back? Yes, I said, and meant it. I'll be here. We walked out together into the cold December afternoon. The sky was already starting to darken. Winter days are so short, over almost before they've begun, and the parking lot was nearly empty. Just a few cars left, including mine and what I assumed was Ruth's, an old Buick the color of butter. You doing anything tonight? Ruth asked, her breath making little clouds in the cold air. No. Going home, I suppose. Maybe watching something on television. Come have coffee with me instead. I live about 10 minutes from here. Nothing fancy. Just instant coffee and maybe some cookies if I can remember where I put them. My cat ate a hole in the bag last week, so I had to hide them. I hesitated. I barely knew this woman. We'd spent 4 hours scooping food side by side. That was all. But then I thought about going home to my empty house, checking my phone, seeing whatever angry messages my children had left, sitting alone on Christmas evening while they sat together somewhere without me. And the thought exhausted me. Coffee sounds nice, I said. Ruth's apartment was small and warm and absolutely stuffed with books. Every wall had shelves, and every shelf was overflowing. Books stacked on tables, books piled in corners, books used as coasters for other books. A cat, fat, orange, extremely judgmental, appeared from somewhere and wound around my ankles as I sat down on her couch. "That's Marmalade," Ruth said. "He hates everyone, but he'll pretend to like you if he thinks you have food." She made coffee in an old percolator, the kind that bubbles and sputters, the kind I hadn't seen since my grandmother's kitchen 40 years ago. The smell filled the apartment and made it feel even warmer somehow. We sat in her living room while the sky outside turned from gray to black. She told me about her children. A son in Seattle who called once a year on her birthday, sometimes remembered to send a card, mostly didn't. A daughter in Texas who'd married a man Ruth couldn't stand. A man who'd convinced the daughter that Ruth was toxic because she asked once why they never visited. "Toxic," Ruth repeated, making air quotes with her fingers. That's the word he used. Can you imagine? 50 years I raised that girl, and I'm toxic because I wanted to see my grandchildren more than once a decade. "When did you last see them?" I asked. "The grandchildren?" 3 years. No, almost 4 now. They've gotten so big. I only see them in photos on Facebook. My grandson started high school this year. I found out from his mother's Instagram. I told her about Kristen, Todd, Nina, the voting, the sweet potato casserole, the Instagram post, the family tree without my name on it. She listened without interrupting, nodding in places like she recognized the story even though all the names were different. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, stroking Marmalade's fat, orange head. "What are you going to do?" she asked finally. "I don't know. Part of me wants to never speak to them again. Just disappear from their lives the way they disappeared from mine. See how they like it." I shook my head. But part of me feels like that's too dramatic, too petty. Like I should be bigger than that. Like I should forgive them and move on. Bigger how? Ruth leaned back in her chair, eyes sharp. Bigger like forgiveness? Or bigger like being the one who always caves first? Because those are two different things. I didn't have an answer. "I'll tell you something I learned," Ruth said. "It took me a long time, but I learned it. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. And moving on doesn't mean going back to the way things were. You can love your kids and also protect yourself from them. Those two things can be true at the same time. It's not either or." I thought about that while Marmalade purred in her lap and the coffee cooled in my hands. "I was left holding the bag for 40 years, I said finally. I gave and gave and gave. And now you're done being the bag," Ruth finished. "Is that terrible? Does that make me a bad mother?" Ruth smiled, a little sadly. "Honey, that's not terrible. That's called wisdom. It takes most people a lot longer than 69 years to get there. Some people never get there at all. They die still giving, still apologizing, still wondering why their children don't love them enough." We talked for another hour, then 2. She told me about a trip she'd been wanting to take. Savannah, Georgia. She'd always wanted to see the Spanish moss and the old houses and the riverfront. She'd read a book about it once years ago, and the pictures stayed with her. "Come with me," she said suddenly. "In the spring, April maybe, before it gets too hot. I'm tired of traveling alone." I laughed. "We just met today." "So what?" "I've known you for 6 hours and I like you better than most people I've known for 50 years. Life's short, Beverly. Life's short and we're not getting younger. Let's see some Spanish moss while we still can." I should have said it was crazy. I should have said I needed to think about it, sleep on it, be responsible. I should have said something practical and careful, the way I'd said everything my whole life. Instead, I heard myself say, "Okay, let's do it." Ruth grinned, her whole face lighting up. "Well, all right then. Savannah in April. Something to look forward to." I got home late that night, close to midnight. The house was dark, and the answering machine was blinking. Yes, I still have an answering machine. I'm 69 years old, and some habits are older than my children. 3 messages from Kristen, each one more upset than the last. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Call me back. You can't seriously be boycotting Christmas because of a misunderstanding. Mom, the kids are asking where Grandma is. What am I supposed to tell them? That you abandoned us? Mom, you're being incredibly selfish. I can't believe you're doing this to your family on Christmas. We're all here together and you're just somewhere else. This is really hurtful." I listened to all 3 messages. Then I deleted them, one by one, listening to the little beep after each one. Then I made myself a cup of tea, sat down in my husband's old chair, the one that still smells faintly of him, even after all these years, and looked around my empty living room. The Christmas tree I'd put up was small, just a tabletop one from the drugstore. Nothing like the big trees we used to have when the kids were little. But the lights were pretty, blinking softly in the darkness, red and gold and green reflected in the window glass. My children had voted me out. They'd held a family meeting, sent a group text, and decided I wasn't worth including. And when I finally said no, when I finally chose myself, they called me selfish. They said I was abandoning them, but I didn't feel selfish, and I hadn't abandoned anyone. I felt light, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that I'd forgotten it was even there, something that had become part of my body, part of my posture, part of the way I moved through the world. And now that I'd finally set it down, I could finally breathe. I could finally stand up straight. January came cold and gray. I didn't call my children. They didn't call me either. At first because they were angry, I think, and then because the silence became its own kind of wall, too thick to break through, too solid to pretend wasn't there. Kristen texted once around the second week of January. "Mom, we need to talk about what happened at Christmas." I wrote back, "There's nothing to talk about, sweetheart. You voted. I accepted the results." No response. I found myself thinking less about them as the days passed. Not forgetting. I don't think a mother ever forgets her children. Not really. Not even when they've hurt her more than she thought possible. But letting go of the constant worry. The constant wondering. What were they thinking? How were they feeling? Were they okay? They were adults. They were 41 and 44 and 37 years old. They had their own houses, their own families, their own lives. They'd made their choices. I didn't have to live inside those choices anymore. I didn't have to carry them around like a weight on my chest. Ruth and I had coffee every week now. Sometimes at her place, sometimes at mine. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our marriages, our regrets. The men we'd loved and the ones we wished we hadn't. The children we'd raised and the ways they'd disappointed us. We were like 2 old soldiers comparing scars. Except our scars were invisible, written on the inside where nobody could see. We made plans for Savannah. She showed me pictures on her computer. The hotel she'd found, a nice little place near the river, with good reviews from other women our age. The restaurants she wanted to try, the ones that served shrimp and grits and pecan pie. The cemetery with the famous sculpture of the bird girl, the one from that movie I'd never seen, but she'd read the book twice. You know what I like about you? Ruth said one afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with marmalade inexplicably in her lap, even though she'd left him at home. Cats, apparently, could teleport when they wanted to. What's that? You're not bitter. I mean, you're hurt. You've got every right to be hurt. But you're not rotted through with bitterness. You're not spending every conversation complaining about your kids, going over and over the same grievances until you wear a hole in the floor. I'm a little bitter, I admitted. Sure, but not poisoned bitter. Not can't see past it bitter. She took a sip of her coffee. You're bitter like lemon in tea. Adds flavor, but doesn't take over. I laughed, surprised. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my bitterness. It's a compliment. I've known plenty of women who let their kids' behavior curdle them, turned sour from the inside out. You didn't. You just stepped to the side, started making a different life. I'm still making it, I said. I don't know if it's a life yet. It's more like a rough draft, a sketch. All lives are sketches, Ruth said. You just keep drawing until you run out of paper. February, March. The weather started to warm, slowly, reluctantly, the way spring comes to the south. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. A warm day followed by a frost that kills everything you just planted. I put pansies in my front garden. They can take the cold. I joined a book club at the library, mostly women my age, widows and empty nesters looking for something to do with their afternoons. I started walking every morning, just around the neighborhood, past houses I'd seen 1,000 times but never really looked at. One afternoon, I ran into my neighbor Margaret. She's about my age, widowed too, lives in the yellow house on the corner. We'd waved at each other for 20 years, but never really talked beyond nice weather and how's your garden. Beverly, she said, stopping on the sidewalk. I haven't seen you in ages. Where have you been hiding? Just here, I said. Keeping busy. She nodded, then leaned closer, lowering her voice even though there was no one around to hear. I heard about Thanksgiving, what your kids did. My daughter told me. She's friends with someone who knows someone. She trailed off, looking embarrassed. You know how it is. Word gets around. I should have been mortified. The whole neighborhood knowing my children had voted me out of the holiday dinner like I was a bad candidate in some kind of family election. But I wasn't mortified. I wasn't even embarrassed. It's true, I said. They voted. Margaret's eyes went wide. Good Lord, I knew Kristen could be a bit. She searched for a polite word. Particular, but still. Your own mother. It was a surprise to me, too. What did you do? Did you go anyway? No, I said. I found something better to do. She looked at me for a long moment, really looked, like she was seeing me for the first time. Then she smiled. Good for you, Beverly, she said. Good for you. April arrived with flowers and warm breezes and the smell of cut grass. Ruth and I took a train to Savannah. Neither of us wanted to deal with driving. Our eyes weren't what they used to be. And sat in the observation car watching the South roll by outside the windows. Red clay fields. Pine forests. Little towns with names I'd never heard, each one with a church steeple and a water tower. I thought about my children as the train moved. Not with anger, not anymore. The anger had burned itself out over the winter, like a fire that finally runs out of fuel. What was left was something quieter, sadder, a kind of grief, I suppose, for the family I thought I had, the family that turned out to be something else entirely. I loved them. I would always love them. But I didn't have to sacrifice myself for them anymore. I didn't have to be available at their convenience, useful for their purposes, invisible when they didn't need me. I could love them from a distance. I could wish them well without wishing myself away. My phone buzzed in my purse. I took it out and looked at the screen. A message from Kristen. "Mom, it's been months. Can we please talk? I miss you." I stared at those words, watching them just sit there on the screen. I miss you. Did she? Did she miss me, Beverly, the woman who had opinions and needs and a life of her own? Or did she miss Mom, the function, the service, the endless well of giving that never asked for anything in return? I didn't know, and I realized, sitting on that train watching Georgia go by outside the window, that I might never know, and that had to be okay. Ruth glanced over from her seat. "News? Kristen says she misses me. What are you going to say?" I thought about it for a long moment. Then I put the phone back in my purse without typing anything. "Nothing right now," I said. "I'll know when I'm ready." Ruth nodded. "That's fair. No rush." "No rush," I agreed. And I meant it. Savannah was everything we'd hoped it would be. Moss-draped oak trees lining the streets like wise old guardians. Cobblestones under our feet, uneven and charming and terrible for our old knees, but beautiful anyway. The smell of the river, jasmine blooming somewhere nearby, something sweet drifting from a bakery we never did find. We walked slowly, our bodies demanded it, but we walked everywhere. We ate shrimp and grits at a restaurant overlooking the water, the kind of meal that's simple but perfect. We visited the old cemetery with the bird girl, smaller than we expected from the photographs, her face serene and mysterious, holding her two bowls like she was waiting for something that was never going to come. On our last evening in Savannah, we found a bench in one of the famous squares and sat there watching the light change. The sun going down slow and golden, the shadows stretching long across the grass. "I'm glad you came," Ruth said. "I'm glad you asked. Next year maybe Asheville or Charleston or somewhere neither of us has ever been. The world's full of places I've never seen, and I'm running out of excuses not to see them." I smiled. "Let's see them all." She laughed. "We don't have that much time left, you know." "Then let's not waste any of it on people who don't want us around." I got home from Savannah to find a voicemail from Todd. His voice was different, quieter, less sure of itself. Not the voice of a man making demands, the voice of a man who'd been thinking. "Mom, it's me. I've been thinking about everything. The way things have been. The way I've been." A pause. "I know I owe you money. I know I never paid you back. But it's not even about that. I should have called. I should have defended you at Thanksgiving. I should have said something when they were talking about you like you were a problem to solve. I should have been better. I should have been the son you deserved instead of the son I turned into." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear him breathing. "I don't know if you want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not just word sorry. Sorry in the way where I look back and I don't recognize the person I became. Anyway, call me if you want, or don't. I understand either way." The message ended. I listened to it again, then a third time. I saved it, put down the phone, and made myself a cup of tea. I didn't call him back that night. I wasn't punishing him. Not exactly. I was just letting the words settle, seeing how they felt in the morning, seeing if they were real or just another version of asking for something. The next morning, The words still felt real. There was something in his voice I hadn't heard in years. Not a performance, not an expectation, just sadness, regret. The sound of a man looking at himself honestly, maybe for the first time. I picked up the phone and called him. "Mom?" He sounded surprised, like he hadn't expected me to call back at all. "You're actually calling?" "I got your message," I said. "I'm listening." There was a long pause. Then, "I was wrong, not just about Thanksgiving, but about the way I've treated you for years, like you were always going to be there, like I could just take and you'd never run out, like the well would never go dry." "Yes," I said. "That's how it felt. I know. I see that now. I don't know what happened to me. I used to be better than this. I used to be the kid who brought you flowers on Mother's Day, remember? Real flowers from Mrs. Henderson's garden. I picked them myself because I knew you liked the yellow ones." I remembered. I remembered that little boy, dirt on his knees and yellow petals in his hands, so proud of himself for thinking of me. "I remember," I said. And then somewhere along the way I became this. I don't know when it happened. I don't know why. I just got lost somewhere, and I didn't even realize I was lost until you stopped coming around, and suddenly everything felt wrong. "We all get lost sometimes," I said. "What matters is whether we try to find our way back." "I'm trying," he said. "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I deserve it, but I'm trying." Forgiveness is a long road, Todd, longer than I used to think. But trying is a start. Spring turned to summer. The days got longer and hotter. The pansies gave way to impatience. The azaleas bloomed and dropped their petals like pink snow on the sidewalk. Todd called every few weeks now, not to ask for anything, just to talk. About his job, his kids, the garden he was trying to grow, even though he killed everything he planted. Small things. Normal things. The kind of conversation we used to have before everything went wrong. We were rebuilding something. Slowly, brick by brick, word by word. I didn't know what it would look like when it was done. Maybe it would never be done. Maybe that's not how these things work. But I was willing to find out. Kristen sent another text in June. "Mom, it's Mackenzie's birthday next week. She's asking if you'll come, please." I thought about it for 2 days, weighed it in my mind like something heavy. Then I wrote back, "I'll come for an hour, for Mackenzie, not because things are okay between us." The party was awkward. Kristen tried too hard, laughing too loud, complimenting my outfit 3 times, asking questions about Savannah like she actually cared about the answers. But Mackenzie ran to me the moment I walked in, threw her arms around my waist, and held on so tight I nearly lost my balance. "Grandma, you came. I didn't think you'd come." "Of course I came, sweetheart. It's your birthday." I stayed for 90 minutes. I gave Mackenzie her present, a necklace that had been my mother's, something I'd been saving for the right moment. I ate a piece of cake. I talked to the children about school and summer and all the small things that matter to kids. And then I said goodbye and drove home. Kristen walked me to my car, her heels clicking on the driveway. "Mom, thank you for coming. It meant a lot to Mackenzie." "I came for her," I said. "Not for you." Kristen's face fell, but she nodded, accepting it. "I know. I deserve that." "Yes, you do." I got in my car and drove away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt honest. And that was enough. Nina never apologized. I don't know if she ever will. Some people don't have it in them. The ability to look at themselves clearly, to say, I was wrong, to change direction when they've been walking the wrong way for years. She still texted the group chat occasionally, photos of the kids, updates about her job. But she never texted me directly, never called, never acknowledged what had happened. I made my peace with it, slowly. You can't force someone to see you. You can't make them care if they've decided not to. All you can do is decide how long you're willing to stand in an empty doorway, waiting for someone who isn't coming. It's September now, nearly a year since that Thanksgiving text. A year since I stood in my kitchen reading We Voted while the marshmallows melted. Ruth is coming over for dinner tonight. Tomorrow we're booking flights to Charleston. We've decided the train takes too long and we're not getting any younger. Next month, I'm teaching a class at the community center. Basic first aid for seniors. Something I can do with my nursing background. Something that makes me feel useful in a way that's mine. My phone sits on the counter, quiet for now. There's a message from Todd. A photo of Mackenzie holding up a drawing she made at school. She's smiling. I'm smiling too, looking at it. There's nothing from Kristen today, but that's okay. There's nothing from Nina either, but that's okay too. I don't hate my children. I love them the way I've always loved them, completely, painfully, in that way that never goes away, no matter how much they've hurt you. But I don't need their permission to exist anymore. I don't need their approval to feel like I matter. I don't need to be invited to their tables to know that I have a place in the world. I found a notepad the other day and wrote a letter. Not to send, just to get the thoughts out of my head, to put them somewhere outside myself. Dear Kristen, Todd, and Nina, I wrote. You voted me out. You sat in a room, or maybe just on your phones in separate rooms, and decided I wasn't worth including. And in doing so, you gave me a gift you didn't intend. You reminded me that I have a vote too. And I voted for myself. I tore up the letter after I finished it. Some things don't need to be said out loud. They just need to be lived.
She didn't beg, didn't chase them, didn't explain herself. And I'll tell you, that takes guts. A lot of people say she should have tried harder, talked it out, been the bigger person. Why? They made their choice, so she made hers. Only difference is, she kept her dignity. And honey, at our age, that's worth more than any seat at their table.
If you're reading this, if any part of this story sounds familiar, I want you to know something. I know I'm not the only grandmother who got that text, the one that starts with, we decided, or we think it's best. Like you're a problem to solve, not a person to love. Like you're a line item in someone else's budget. Something to move around, vote out, eliminate when you become inconvenient. I spent 40 years giving everything I had to people who never stopped to ask what I needed. I made the meals and cleaned the houses and babysat the grandchildren and loaned the money and never, not once, said, what about me? Because that's what mothers do. That's what we were taught to do. Give until there's nothing left. And when I finally said, no, thank you, I have plans. 4 words, that's all. 4 small words. They called me selfish. They said I was abandoning them. They said I was being manipulative, punishing them, acting childish. But I wasn't selfish. And I didn't abandon anyone. They abandoned me first. They just didn't expect me to notice. So if this sounds familiar, if you've been voted out, pushed aside, told you're too much or not enough, tell me. Tell me your story. Tell me I'm not alone in this, because I don't think I am, and I don't think you are either. We're just learning, maybe a little late, that our vote counts too. The morning I left for Charleston with Ruth, I stood in my kitchen for a moment before heading out the door. The same kitchen where I'd read that text nearly a year ago. The same counter where the sweet potatoes had been sitting, half-cooked, abandoned. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt something else. Something steadier. Something that had been growing in me all year, quiet and strong. Like a plant putting down roots when nobody's watching. My mother's recipe book was still in the cabinet. I took it out and looked at that page one more time, the sweet potato casserole. Her handwriting, faded, but there. For my Beverly, make this when you need to feel loved. I'd spent years making that dish for other people, hoping it would make them love me back, hoping if I gave them enough, cooked enough, helped enough, they'd finally see me, finally appreciate me, finally treat me like I mattered. It didn't work. You can't cook your way into someone's heart if they've already decided you don't belong there. You can't give enough to make someone grateful if they've decided your giving is their right. But I could make it for myself. I could sit down at my own table, eat my own mother's recipe, and remember that I was loved once. Completely, unconditionally, without asking for anything in return. And I could be that love for myself now. Finally. I closed the book and put it back. Ruth honked the horn outside. She'd borrowed her neighbor's car because hers was in the shop again. "Come on, Beverly!" she yelled through the open window. "Charleston's not going to wait forever." I locked my front door, walked down the porch steps, and climbed into the passenger seat. "Ready?" she asked, already pulling out of the driveway. I looked at my house getting smaller in the side mirror. The house where I'd raised my children, buried my husband, spent 40 years of my life. It looked peaceful in the morning light. It looked like it was going to be fine without me for a few days. "Ready," I said. And I was.